Hey guys, welcome back to Zenkai DBS. This is part 2 of What If Goku Was Reborn with All His Memories. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, the link is in the description. Go watch it first, then come back. If you already have, let's dive straight into part 2. 4 months after Ginyu Force inspection. The sky above planet Vegeta looked wrong. Not stormy or threatening in any obvious way, just still. Like the planet itself was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible that everyone could feel but nobody wanted to name. Kakarot pressed his tiny hands against the reinforced glass of the palace command center, his infant body trembling despite every attempt at control. He was 13 months old now, could walk and talk better than most toddlers, but standing here watching the end approach made him feel small in ways that had nothing to do with physical size. Around him, the skeleton crew of defenders moved with practiced efficiency. No panic. No chaos, just grim determination and the quiet acceptance that comes when you've rehearsed your own death for months. Energy signatures confirmed, a technician announced, and Kakarot could hear him fighting to keep his voice steady. Frieza's flagship plus 12 support vessels, ETA to orbital insertion, 4 hours, 17 minutes. 4 hours. That was all the time left. 4 hours until everything, his warnings, his planning, his desperate attempts to change fate came down to one simple question. Would 38% survival rate be enough? King Vegeta's voice crackled through every communicator on the planet, broadcast from his position 3 star systems away, where he'd been strategically positioned with the 50 strongest warriors. Execute Protocol Exodus, all phases. Great Ape teams to nightside positions. Evacuation ships to launch windows. Decoy signatures activate on my mark. Guinea tightened her grip on Kakarot, and he could feel her heartbeat racing against his back. His mother had always been gentle by Saiyan standards, more comfortable in the meat processing plants than on battlefields. But right now, her arms felt like steel cables, protective and terrified in equal measure. "We're gonna make it," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "We planned for this. We prepared. We're going to make it." Kakarot wanted to believe her, but he'd lived through planet Vegeta's destruction once before, and no amount of preparation could fully erase the memory of what was coming. Somewhere on the planet's night side, Commander Nappa was gathering 200 Saiyans who'd volunteered for what the military documents politely called high-risk delay operations. Everyone knew what that really meant. They were buying time with their lives, and they knew it, and they'd volunteered anyway. That's what got to Kakarot the most. Not the destruction itself. He'd seen planets die before, had watched universes teeter on the edge of extinction. But the quiet heroism of ordinary Saiyans choosing to stand between genocide and their families, that was something his first life had never prepared him for. 3 hours before impact, nightside. Nappa looked out over his volunteer defense force and felt something he'd almost forgotten existed. Pride that had nothing to do with conquest. 23 years he'd served the Frieza Force. 23 years crushing civilizations, breaking populations, being the monster that descended from the stars to remind inferior races why Saiyans were feared across the galaxy. And for what? So Frieza could sleep better knowing his attack dogs were properly leashed? Listen up. His voice carried across the assembled warriors, and Kakarot would have recognized the tone. It was the same one Vegeta used when he was done posturing and actually meant what he said. "We all know the score. Frieza's coming to finish what he started. Our job isn't to win. We can't win. Our job is to be the biggest pain in his ass possible while evacuation ships get clear." A ripple of grim laughter from the volunteers. Saiyan humor, dark and fatalistic. "We're using pattern Delta 7, scatter formations, decoy signatures, hit and run harassment. Every second we keep that bastard distracted is another second for your families to reach escape velocity. Every minute we survive is another minute the Saiyan race survives." Nappa paused, and when he continued his voice had dropped to something rawer. 23 years I've been a weapon for Frieza. Today I'm a weapon for us, for our children. For the chance that somewhere, somehow, Saiyans become something better than what we were. The full moon was rising over the horizon, and Kakarot felt it even from the command center hundreds of miles away, that primal pull that every Saiyan with a tail recognized. The Ozaru transformation, the great ape form that multiplied power tenfold but sacrificed reasoning for raw fury. 200 Saiyans began their transformation simultaneously, and even from orbit, Frieza's forces would have detected that power spike. 200 warriors, power levels jumping from an average of 2,900 to 29,000 each. Combined, nearly 6 million units of raw destructive power. It still wouldn't be enough. Frieza's final form alone clocked in at 120 million. But that wasn't the point. The point was making him work for it, making him chase them, making every Saiyan life cost him time and effort, and maybe, just maybe, a tiny sliver of the arrogance that made him think genocide was easy. Evacuation Ship 47, Underground Launch Bay. Final boarding call. Totapo, the grizzled pilot, was physically shoving Saiyans into the ship now. We're at 140% capacity, and I don't care. Everyone squeeze in, grab something. We launch in 90 seconds. The ship was designed for 30. There were 57 Saiyans packed into every available space. Some sitting on others' laps, children clutched tight to parents, warriors wedged into storage compartments that were definitely not rated for living passengers. The life support systems were screaming warnings that Totapo was systematically ignoring because what was the alternative? Leave people behind to definitely die, or overload the ship and maybe everyone dies? Easy math. Guinea pressed Kakarot against her chest hard enough that he could barely breathe. Around them, the chaos of last-minute boarding played out in fragments that would haunt survivors for decades. A mother desperately asking if anyone had seen her daughter. A warrior helping an elderly scientist into a storage locker that would serve as an emergency seat. 2 children crying for their father who'd volunteered for the Great Ape Defense. A teenager clutching a datapad containing the only surviving copies of Saiyan historical records. "Mama," Kakarot whispered, his infant voice almost lost in the noise. "The other ships, are they launching on schedule?" Guinea checked her wrist communicator, Capsule Corp technology that some enterprising Saiyan had stolen and reverse-engineered. 12 ships already away. Another 8 launching within the hour, if the Great Ape Defense holds for even 30 minutes. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. They both knew the math. 30 minutes meant maybe 3,500 survivors instead of 3,000. 30 minutes was the difference between preserving a culture and watching it dwindle to scattered remnants. Kakarot stretched his senses as far as they could go, his infant body's limitations frustrating but not crippling. He could feel them. Every Saiyan still on the planet. Thousands of key signatures, each one a life, a story, a future that might or might not survive the next few hours. And above them all, descending through the atmosphere like a meteor made of malice, he felt Frieza. Upper atmosphere, Frieza's arrival. You know what really gets me about Frieza? It's not the power, though, yeah, 530,000 in his first form is absolutely obscene. It's not even the casual cruelty, though that's pretty high on the list. It's the boredom. The tyrant floated in the vacuum of space, his ship settling into low orbit, and he was bored. Genocide of an entire race, and he couldn't even muster enough interest to care beyond making sure it got done properly. Saiyans, his voice broadcast across every communication frequency the planet had. "I've grown tired of your usefulness. Time to take out the trash." No dramatic speech, no villain monologue, just announcing extermination like he was scheduling a maintenance appointment. But then his scouter started going crazy. Power signatures spiking all over the planet, not just increasing, but multiplying. The night side was lit up with energy readings, 200 Saiyans transforming into great apes simultaneously. For the first time in years, Frieza looked actually interested. Oh? He checked the readings again. Combined power approaching 1 million? And they seemed to be coordinating. How un-Saiyan-like. When did these monkeys learn to think tactically? He transformed, first form to second form, in a ripple of power that sent atmospheric shockwaves across 3 continents. 530,000 becoming over 1 million in seconds, his body elongating and gaining those distinctive horns that made him look even more like the demon he was. Very well. Let's see how long this entertaining resistance lasts before I lose patience. Nightside battlefield. The great apes didn't charge. That's what would have happened in the old Saiyan culture. Just rush the enemy with overwhelming fury, trusting in power to carry the day. But Kakarot's training had changed things. Nappa's strategic mind had refined things. And desperation had made things ruthlessly efficient. The moment Frieza descended toward their position, all 200 great apes scattered, not retreating, dispersing. 20 different directions simultaneously, each group carrying decoy signature generators that made it look like there were even more targets. Frieza actually laughed. They're using technology to confuse my scouter? Saiyans employing tactics more sophisticated than punch it until it stops moving? I haven't seen that in, well, ever, actually. He fired death beams at the 3 nearest great apes. Precision strikes that would have killed them instantly. Would have. The targets exploded impressively, but they were decoys. Key generators designed to look like Saiyan signatures. No actual casualties. Clever! Frieza's voice carried genuine amusement now. Very clever. This might actually be entertaining for a few minutes. And that was the point. Every minute Frieza spent hunting scattered great apes was another minute for evacuation ships to break atmosphere. The defenders weren't trying to survive, they were trying to be maximally annoying targets while dying as slowly as possible. It was a strategy built entirely on sacrifice, and it was working. Nappa's group of 20 great apes regrouped in the northern mountains, using terrain to mask their signatures. His transformed mind, more beast than warrior, but still carrying tactical awareness, calculated timing with brutal precision. Frieza was traveling at roughly Mach 50 in atmosphere. Distance to their position, 800 kilometers. That gave them 90 seconds before engagement. Split again, his roar echoed across the mountains. Pattern Delta 7, make him chase us individually. The great apes scattered once more, each one dropping a decoy generator as they fled. Breadcrumb trails of false targets that would waste precious seconds, maybe minutes if they were lucky. Back in Ship 47, Kakarot watched through his key sense as power signatures winked out one by one. Frieza catching targets, killing great apes, systematically hunting his way through the defense force. But every death bought 15 to 30 seconds. 30 seconds times 200 warriors meant 100 minutes of delay if they were incredibly lucky. Realistically, maybe 20 minutes total before Frieza got impatient and just destroyed the planet to skip the tedious hunting. 20 minutes. That's what 200 Saiyan lives were worth in the mathematics of genocide. All ships launch now. The evacuation coordinator's voice was cracking with stress. Forget loading sequences, forget full capacity. Everyone up, now. Totapo's hands flew across the controls. Hang on to something. The launch tunnel's ceiling exploded upward. Emergency charges creating a vertical shaft straight to the surface. 12 ships screamed skyward simultaneously, their engines redlining so hard that even Kakarot could hear the metal protesting. The G-forces were crushing. Kakarot's infant body was pressed into Guinea's chest hard enough that he couldn't breathe, couldn't move, could only feel as the ship accelerated past any reasonable safety parameters, because safety was a luxury and survival was all that mattered. His key sense was stretched to its absolute limit, tracking everything at once. Great ape teams dying one by one as Frieza hunted them down. Other evacuation ships launching in waves, some making it clean, some taking damage during ascent. Frieza's energy signature transforming again, third form now, power level jumping to 2.5 million because apparently 200 desperate warriors warranted actually trying. King Vegeta's distant strike force holding position, ready to scatter the moment Planet Vegeta's destruction was confirmed. Bardock's squad recording everything from orbit, bearing witness so that someone would remember exactly how this happened. And then, a new signature. Massive, golden. Rising from the planet's southern continent, someone had achieved Super Saiyan. Southern continent, Silera's last stand. Her name was Silera, and she'd never been anyone special. Elite class warrior by birth, sure, but barely. Power level of 4,900 when most elites were pushing 8,000. Competent, but not exceptional. Married to a low-class warrior who'd been funny and kind and dead for 20 minutes now, caught by Frieza during the Great Ape defense. She'd watched her daughter board an evacuation ship 6 hours ago. Watched her mate volunteer for the defense knowing he wouldn't survive. Watched her entire world burn while she stood on a cliff overlooking the capital, officially on the evacuation list. Officially supposed to be running for a ship right now. But her mate was dead. and her daughter was safe, which meant Silera had nothing left to lose and one final contribution to make. The thing about Super Saiyan transformation, it's not just about power. Kakarot had tried to explain this in his training sessions. You need the physical strength, yeah, but more than that, you need a catalyst. Some moment where your emotions crack through every limit you've ever known and rewrite your biology at the cellular level. Grief did that. Rage did that. Desperate love for someone who was escaping while you stayed behind to buy them seconds. That definitely did that. Silera thought about her daughter's face, about her mate's final transmission, just static and screaming, then nothing. About 6,000 Saiyans who would die in the next half hour because some tyrant decided their potential was threatening. Something inside her didn't just break, it transcended. Her aura exploded golden, hair standing on end, power multiplying by 50 in a heartbeat. 4,900 becoming 245,000, lightning crackling around her transformed body as reality itself seemed to bend. The legends were real. Super Saiyan was real. And she had maybe 10 minutes before her unprepared body burned itself out trying to sustain power it wasn't built to handle. 10 minutes. She could work with 10 minutes. Frieza! Her voice carried across continents, amplified by power that shouldn't exist. Face me, you bastard! Up in the atmosphere, Frieza paused mid-execution of his 47th grade ape victim. That signature. Golden. Fierce. Impossible. No, he whispered, and for the first time in decades his voice carried genuine shock. It can't be. The legend is real? He descended towards Silera's position like a meteor, abandoning the great ape hunting entirely. This required personal attention. This required understanding whether his paranoia about Saiyan potential had been justified or if he was chasing myths. When he found her standing on that cliff, golden aura blazing, eyes teal with barely contained fury, Frieza actually smiled. Incredible. The legendary Super Saiyan actually exists. And here I thought I was just being paranoid when I ordered your genocide. He transformed to his final form as he spoke, compact, smooth, power level jumping to 120 million. Turns out I was perfectly justified after all. Silera didn't waste breath on words. She moved, Super Saiyan speed covering kilometers in eye blinks, and her first punch actually connected with Frieza's jaw. His head snapped back. Genuine surprise flashed across his features. She'd hurt him. Not damaged him significantly, but hurt him. When was the last time anything had managed that? Marvelous. Frieza laughed, genuine delight replacing surprise. You actually managed to strike me. That hasn't happened in, decades at least. The fight was brutal and short. Silera had power, had the legendary transformation, had grief-fueled rage pushing her past every limit. But Frieza had 120 million units of power, backed by decades of combat experience and zero emotional investment in the outcome. Every exchange taught her something about fighting opponents far stronger than herself. Every second she survived was another second for evacuation ships to climb toward escape velocity. She wasn't trying to win, just like the Great Ape Defense. She was trying to be maximally annoying while dying as slowly as possible. It worked for 8 minutes. 8 minutes of desperate combat, of Silera pushing her unstable Super Saiyan form past every breaking point, of Frieza toying with her like a cat with a mouse, while also taking her seriously enough that he couldn't just casually dismiss her. 8 minutes meant 3 more evacuation ships reached minimum safe distance. 8 minutes meant her daughter's ship cleared the potential blast radius. 8 minutes bought with her life, her transformation, and her absolute refusal to die without making it cost something. The final exchange came when Silera's Super Saiyan form flickered, her body finally giving out, unable to sustain legendary power without the training to support it. Frieza's tail whipped out faster than she could track, catching her across the ribs. Multiple bones shattered, internal organs ruptured. She crashed through 3 mountains and didn't get back up. Was it worth it? Frieza floated down to where she lay dying, genuine curiosity in his voice. Achieving your race's legendary transformation, only to realize it still leaves you an insect before me? Tell me, was the hope worse than ignorance would have been? Silera's vision was fading, blood filling her mouth, Super Saiyan transformation guttering like a dying star. But through the haze she saw it, Ship 23, her daughter's ship, breaking atmosphere successfully. She smiled through blood-stained teeth, worth everything. And then she was gone, her key signature winking out like a candle in wind. Frieza studied her corpse for a moment, then looked up at the evacuation ships now distant enough to potentially escape. His expression shifted from curious to irritated. Oh, I see. All of this, the Great Ape defense, the decoys, even the Super Saiyan, was just stalling tactics. How annoying. He rose back into the upper atmosphere, tracking the fleeing vessels. Some were already entering FTL coordinates, others were still vulnerable. Well, can't let all of them escape. That would defeat the entire purpose of genocide. He began charging his signature technique, the one that had destroyed planets before would destroy planets again. The supernova. Orange-red energy gathering around his fingertip, compressed to impossible density, growing larger by the second. Ship 47, breaking atmosphere. He's doing it, Kakarot whispered, sensing the massive energy gathering above planet Vegeta. The supernova. He's actually... Can we reach FTL before it hits? Someone in the crew compartment shouted. No. Totapo's response was pure desperate calculation. We need another 90 seconds to charge the FTL drive, and that supernova will detonate in approximately 60 seconds, Kakarot finished quietly. The ship's view screen showed planet Vegeta below. His birth world, cities he'd never walked in, training grounds he'd never used, mountains and oceans, and 6,000 Saiyans who'd stayed behind to buy time for those evacuating. Guinea held him tighter. Around them, 57 Saiyans held their breath. And Frieza released the supernova. The thing about planet-killing techniques? They're not just big explosions. Frieza's supernova was precisely calculated to target a planet's core, use gravitational compression to amplify force, create a chain reaction that turned the planet's own mass into additional destructive energy. When you applied that to planet Vegeta, a super-dense world with 10 times Earth's gravity, you got something that didn't just destroy a planet, you erased it. The supernova descended like a miniature sun, orange-red energy compressed to impossible density, impact in 10 seconds. Kakarot pressed his infant face against the viewport and watched his birth world die. Reality screamed. Not metaphorically, there was an actual sound as fundamental forces of nature were violated, as matter was converted to energy on a planetary scale, as 10,000 years of civilization ceased to exist in 8.7 seconds. Mountains vaporized, oceans boiled into plasma. The planetary crust cracked like an eggshell, revealing the molten core beneath for one terrible instant before that too disintegrated into expanding debris. 6,000 Saiyan key signatures, every single one that Kakarot could still sense on the planet, vanished simultaneously. Not died slowly, not fought to the end. Just ceased to exist, erased from reality as thoroughly as if they'd never been born. The shockwave expanded at relativistic speeds, fast enough that light itself seemed slow. It caught the 7 trailing evacuation ships like a tsunami made of fire and hate. Ship 32. Shields failed immediately. Hull breach, 47 casualties, 3 survivors in reinforced sections who would spend the rest of their lives wishing they'd died with the others. Ship 41. Shields held, but engines took critical damage, limping away at sublight speeds with everyone aboard knowing they'd never reach safety. Ship 47, shields flickering at 23%, hull integrity failing, spinning wildly from shockwave impact while Totapo screamed at controls that barely responded, "Hold together! Just hold together for 30 more seconds." The FTL drive engaged with 0.3 seconds to spare. Reality twisted, space folded, and Ship 47 vanished into faster-than-light travel just before a secondary shockwave would have finished them. Kakarot's last glimpse of his birth system was an expanding debris field where planet Vegeta used to be, rock and metal and ash spreading across space like a grotesque flower, the grave of a civilization scattered to the stellar winds. Emergency Rendezvous Point Alpha, 6 hours later. 17 evacuation ships limped into the designated coordinates over the next 6 hours. Some arrived on time. Some arrived late, held together by emergency repairs and prayer. Some barely arrived at all. Ship 32 came in as essentially a life raft, 3 survivors in a hull so damaged it was genuinely shocking they'd survived the flight. Ships 52 and 61 never arrived. Status unknown, presumed destroyed. Final count, 3,847 confirmed survivors out of more than 10,000, 38.47% survival rate. The numbers were cold, clinical, reducing tragedy to mathematics. But those 3,847 survivors each carried stories. Families who'd been separated, some members evacuated early, some died in the Great Ape Defense, some on ships that never made it. Warriors who'd watched comrades sacrifice themselves for minutes of delay, children who'd left parents behind, scientists who'd preserved knowledge but lost their culture's physical history, everyone carrying survivors' guilt that would haunt them for decades. Kakarot stumbled out of Ship 47's boarding ramp. He could walk pretty well now, though he had to concentrate, and watched other survivors emerge into the cold void of the asteroid field. Low gravity meant people floated more than walked, clustering in groups of stunned silence or desperate searching. Did you see Ship 19 launch? My brother was on Ship 32. Does anyone know if? They said my mother's ship made it, but I can't find her. Someone please tell me the children's ships got clear. Grief. Raw and fresh and overwhelming, but also something else. Purpose. Because unlike the original timeline where 4 scattered Saiyans didn't even know their race had been nearly exterminated, these survivors knew exactly what had happened. They'd witnessed it, prepared for it, fought against it. And they'd saved 38.47% of their people through organized resistance. That wasn't victory, but it was defiance. Kakarot! Bardock's voice cut through the chaos. His father's ship had arrived at the rendezvous, along with King Vegeta's strike force of 50 warriors and various scattered units that had been off-world during the genocide. Bardock sprinted across the asteroid's surface in low-gravity bounds and crushed Ginai and Kakarot in a desperate embrace. You're alive. He kept repeating it like a prayer. You're alive. You're alive. Thank everything that exists you're alive. Silera? Ginai asked quietly. Bardock's expression answered before his words did. She bought us 8 minutes, achieved Super Saiyan, fought Frieza directly, used a sealing technique at the end to delay him long enough for the final evacuation ships to escape. Died a hero. Her daughter made it out because of what she did. He pulled up a holographic recording, grainy and distant, but showing Silera's golden transformation and final stand. Every Saiyan who watched it would remember the image for the rest of their lives. Around the asteroid field, variations of that conversation repeated hundreds of times. Did they make it? I'm sorry, but they were on the priority list. The ship took damage. They didn't. No. Grief everywhere. But also, slowly, something else building. Resolve. King Vegeta's holographic image appeared above the assembled survivors, 17th's worth of refugees floating in space with nothing but emergency suits and determination. The king no longer wore royal armor, just functional combat gear. His face aged a decade in 6 hours. We are scattered, he began, voice carrying absolute authority even in total defeat. 17 evacuation ships here. Another 30 ships scattered to various sanctuary coordinates across the galaxy. Some were destroyed, some are in hiding. Full accounting will take weeks. He paused, forcing himself to continue. Preliminary estimate, 3,800 to 4,000 Saiyans survived. Out of more than 10,000, we are refugees now, hunted. The Saiyan civilization as we knew it is gone. Silence, heavy, crushing. What do we do now? A voice from the crowd, Taro, the scientist. King Vegeta looked at his son, Prince Vegeta, standing beside him with hollow eyes, then at Kakarot, then at the assembled survivors. We survive. We scatter into diaspora so Frieza can never exterminate us all in a single strike again. We train, and we remember that today, one of us achieved Super Saiyan. He pulled up the recording of Silera's golden transformation. She wasn't the strongest Saiyan, wasn't elite class by traditional measures, but in her final moments, fighting to protect her daughter who was escaping, she transcended every limit we thought existed. If she could achieve Super Saiyan, then so can we. So can all of us, given time and purpose. The crowd murmured, hope kindling in ashes. Planet Vegeta is gone, but the Saiyan race lives. As long as one of us draws breath, our civilization continues. We'll scatter to a dozen sanctuary worlds. We'll train in secret, we'll grow strong, and someday, not today, not this year, maybe not for a decade, but someday we'll make Frieza regret leaving survivors. The crowd roared. Not celebration, but defiant fury, the sound of a people refusing to be erased. Kakarot watched this and felt complicated emotions warring in his infant chest. In his original timeline, the Saiyan race had been reduced to 4 survivors who'd spent decades scattered and ignorant. Now there were thousands, organized, purposeful, carrying forward both the best and worst of Saiyan culture. He'd changed the timeline, saved lives, given his race a fighting chance, but 6,153 had still died, more than half. Silera's heroic sacrifice, Nappa's great ape defense buying minutes with their lives, ships that never made it, was 38% success or 62% failure? No easy answers. Just the cold mathematics of survival and the warm weight of hope that maybe, somehow, this time would be different. 1 week after Planet Vegeta's destruction, emergency rendezvous point Alpha. The asteroid field became home in a way that made Kakarot's chest ache. Not home like Planet Vegeta had been, warm and alive and full of the constant background hum of 10,000 Saiyan key signatures. This was home like a shelter during a storm. Temporary. Fragile. Better than nothing, but nowhere you'd want to stay. 17 evacuation ships clustered together, their hulls scarred and patched with whatever materials desperate engineers could scavenge. The survivors moved between vessels in emergency suits, rebuilding communications networks, rationing supplies that were supposed to last 3 weeks, and now needed to stretch for 3 months, planning their next moves with the grim efficiency of people who'd already survived the worst. King Vegeta stood in the largest ship's cargo bay, converted into a command center because none of them had the luxury of proper facilities anymore, studying a holographic star map that showed their scattered civilization in brutal clarity. Kakarot sat nearby, held by Guinea because 13 months old was still too young to stand through long strategy sessions, even if his mind could follow every word. Around them, the cell commanders who'd survived, Bardock, Nappa, Silera, Taro, and a dozen others waited for their king's decision. "We can't stay together," King Vegeta said finally. "Frieza thinks he got all of us, but the moment he learns survivors exist, he'll hunt us. 1 target location means 1 attack wipes us out completely. We need to scatter." "How scattered?" Nappa asked. The massive warrior looked diminished somehow, like Planet Vegeta's destruction had taken something from him that power levels couldn't measure. "Individual units? Family groups?" "Cells of 150 to 600 Saiyans," King Vegeta replied, manipulating the star map. "Large enough to maintain culture and training programs, small enough to hide effectively. We established 12 primary sanctuary worlds across the galaxy, each cell developing independently but connected through encrypted communications." He highlighted locations as he spoke, each one chosen for specific strategic advantages. Remote sectors, uncharted territories, primitive worlds where Frieza's empire rarely bothered looking. Cell Alpha, Earth's moon, King Vegeta gestured to a blue planet in a distant spiral arm. 183 Saiyans for surveillance and eventual integration preparation. Kakarot marked this world as significant in his prophecies, so we treat it seriously. Commander, Taro. Taro nodded, accepting the responsibility. The scientist wasn't a warrior by temperament, but he understood the strategic value of observation and patience. Cell Beta, Namek Sector, Planet Suno 2, the king continued. 247 Saiyans focused on mystical training research, psychic development, alternative paths to power. Commander Bardock. Bardock straightened. "Mystical training? I'm a soldier, not a..." "Your precognition is growing stronger," King Vegeta interrupted. "Something about Kakarot's presence, or the timeline changes, or both. You're developing abilities that traditional Saiyan culture never explored. Cell Beta needs someone who understands that there might be power beyond just hitting harder." Bardock looked uncomfortable, but didn't argue. He'd seen too many futures lately to dismiss the value of unconventional approaches. Cell Gamma, Planet Sadala 2, King Vegeta's voice took on a different tone here. 612 Saiyans, including myself and Prince Vegeta. Traditional warrior culture, intensive combat training, direct pursuit of Super Saiyan transformation. If any cell is going to produce warriors strong enough to challenge Frieza, it'll be Gamma. He paused, looking at his son. Prince Vegeta stood rigid, his 8-year-old face carrying a blankness that worried everyone who saw it. The boy hadn't spoken since watching Planet Vegeta explode, just stood there, present but distant, like part of him was still falling through space watching his world burn. Cell Delta, Planet Yardrat Vicinity, the king continued. 412 Saiyans under Commander Nappa. Mission, technique acquisition, spatial manipulation study, instant transmission mastery. The Yardratians are peaceful but possess abilities we need to learn. Nappa grunted acceptance. Babysitting mystics wasn't his first choice, but if it meant learning techniques that could give them an edge. Cells Epsilon through Lambda, various frontier worlds, 2,393 Saiyans total, independent commanders, experimental approaches. King Vegeta highlighted 8 more locations: farming, science, trade, integration with primitive species, whatever works for survival and development. The map showed it all, a civilization scattered across the galaxy like seeds thrown by desperate hands, hoping some would take root and grow. We scatter in 3 days, King Vegeta announced. Each cell receives survival supplies, communications equipment, and training protocols. We maintain contact every 6 months minimum. Share discoveries, warn of threats, coordinate if Frieza's forces get too close to any cell. And if one cell is discovered? Salipa asked the question everyone was thinking. The other 11 survive. King Vegeta's voice was stone. We don't compromise operational security to rescue a compromised cell. It's brutal, but it's the only way to ensure the race survives. One cell dying is tragedy. All cells dying is extinction. Silence. Heavy and uncomfortable, but nobody argued. They'd all watched 6,000 Saiyans die, buying time for 3,847 to escape. Hard math was the only math that mattered now. What about communication with Kakarot? Bardock asked, looking at his son. Cell Alpha will have him on Earth eventually, but he's still an infant. How do we coordinate prophecies and warnings if he's years away from being able to communicate effectively? Kakarot squirmed in Guinea's arms, wanting to speak, but knowing his infant vocal cords could barely handle complex sentences. Finally he managed. Moonbase, monitor me. I'll signal if something important, and when older, can communicate proper. His voice was still that high-pitched toddler sound that made serious tactical discussions feel surreal. But everyone in the room had learned to look past the packaging and hear the adult warrior underneath. Cell Alpha maintains a monitoring station on Earth's moon, King Vegeta confirmed. Kakarot descends to the surface when his physical development allows proper integration, probably in the next year or 2. Until then, Taro's team observes, gathers intelligence on Earth's population, and prepares for eventual first contact. And the Super Saiyan problem? Nappa's question brought everyone back to the core issue. Silera proved the transformation is real and achievable, but she burned out in minutes because her body wasn't prepared. How do we train for something that requires genuine emotional trauma to trigger? King Vegeta pulled up Silera's battle recording, and they all watched again, that golden light, that transcendent moment, that desperate 8 minutes that saved 3 ships. It was beautiful and tragic and frustrating all at once, because it showed them exactly what they needed, but not how to get there sustainably. We don't force it, King Vegeta said finally. Silera achieved Super Saiyan through authentic grief and rage. Trying to manufacture that trauma artificially didn't work. We tried in the months before the genocide, remember? It just produced partial transformations that destabilized. So we train our bodies to be ready, develop our power sustainably, and trust that when the catalyst comes, when we face a moment that breaks us the way Planet Vegeta's destruction broke Silera, we'll be prepared to channel that into transformation. That could take years, Salipa pointed out. Then it takes years. We have time now. Frieza thinks we're dead. That buys us space to train properly instead of desperately. 3 days later, the scattering. Watching the cells separate was like watching a family break apart, knowing you'd probably never see most of these people again. Kakarot stood on Ship 47's observation deck. Guinea held him up to the viewport because he was still too short to see properly on his own, and watched 11 other clusters of ships prepare for departure. Cell Gamma's vessels moved first, King Vegeta's flagship leading 6 transport ships toward coordinates that would take them to their warrior world. Prince Vegeta was on that flagship, still silent, still distant. Kakarot wondered if the boy would ever recover from what he'd witnessed, or if watching your planet explode was the kind of trauma that just permanently changed you. Then Cell Beta departed, Bardock's group heading toward the Namek sector. Guinea pressed against the viewport glass like she could somehow follow her mate through vacuum by sheer will. "Be safe," she whispered, knowing he couldn't hear her. Come back to us. Cell Delta. Cell Epsilon. One by one, the clusters broke away, their FTL drives engaging, ships disappearing into the spaces between spaces where faster-than-light travel happened. Each departure felt like losing family, even though they'd see each other again through holo communications. Seeing someone's holographic image wasn't the same as feeling their key signature nearby, sharing air, existing in the same physical space. Finally, only Cell Alpha remained, 183 Saiyans in 3 damaged evacuation ships, heading toward a remote spiral arm and a blue planet whose inhabitants had no idea their moon was about to become home to alien refugees. Last chance to change your mind, Taro said, appearing beside Guinea and Kakarot. You could join Bardock and Cell Beta. Stay together as a family. Earth surveillance doesn't require you specifically. Guinea looked at Kakarot, and he knew what she was thinking. Safety versus purpose. Staying with Bardock versus positioning her son where he claimed he needed to be. We go to Earth, Guinea said firmly. Kakarot's been right about everything else. If he says Earth matters, then Earth matters. Taro nodded and returned to the command deck. The coordinates locked in, and Ship 47, along with Ships 33 and 51, engaged their FTL drives and headed toward humanity's home solar system. 6 months later, Earth's moon, Cell Alpha Base. They built the base inside a crater on the moon's far side, hidden from Earth's primitive observation technology and shielded from casual scans by Frieza Force patrols. Prefabricated habitats from the evacuation ships, powered by fusion generators that would run for decades, connected by pressurized tunnels and protected by stealth fields that bent light around the installation. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't comfortable. But it was home. Kakarot was 19 months old now, walking without help, talking in mostly complete sentences when he focused, and desperate to begin actual training instead of just the key control exercises his infant body could handle. His power level had grown to 4,200, impressive for a toddler, pathetically weak by warrior standards. Again, Silera instructed, watching Kakarot attempt to maintain 3 key spheres simultaneously. She'd become his primary combat instructor, a role she'd taken on with grim dedication after losing her entire family during the evacuation. Teaching the prophet infant gave her purpose when grief threatened to consume everything else. Kakarot created 3 spheres, made them orbit his small body, held them stable for approximately 8 seconds before his concentration wavered, and they dissipated. Better, Silera acknowledged. Last week, you could only maintain 2. Your control is improving even if your power level development is limited by physical age. Frustrating, Kakarot muttered, and the adult frustration in his toddler voice made Silera's lips twitch toward a smile. No, I could do so much more if body was older. Feel like trapped, mind ready, body not. Welcome to being a warrior, Silera said dryly. That feeling never completely goes away. There's always a gap between what you want to achieve and what your body can currently handle. You just learn to train through it. She pulled up Earth observation data on a holographic display. Speaking of training, we've identified a potential teacher for you down there. Lives in the mountains, isolated, power level of 280, which is exceptional for this planet. Name in their language is Son Gohan, though we're not sure if that's a personal name or title. He practices something they call martial arts, formalized combat techniques passed down through lineages. Kakarot's heart jump. Grandpa Gohan, right on schedule, right where he was supposed to be. When can I go down? Not yet. You're barely 19 months old, Kakarot. Descending to the surface, surviving in wilderness, approaching a human without triggering panic, all of that requires more physical capability than you currently have. Give it another year, maybe 18 months. Let your body catch up to your mind a little. But no buts. I know you're impatient. I know you feel like every day not spent at full capacity is wasted time. But rushing gets people killed. Silera's expression hardened. We lost 6,153 Saiyans because Frieza rushed his genocide instead of being thorough. Don't make the same mistake by rushing your development. Kakarot wanted to argue, but she had a point. His infant body had limitations that enthusiasm couldn't overcome. Better to wait and approach Gohan when he could at least walk steadily and speak clearly. Fine, he muttered. 1 more year. Then I go down. 1 more year, Silera agreed. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the other cells were settling into their new homes and beginning the long work of rebuilding Saiyan civilization from scattered pieces. Cell Gamma, planet Sadala 2. The gravity was wrong. That was Prince Vegeta's first thought stepping onto their new warrior world. Planet Vegeta had been 10x Earth gravity, a crushing weight that made every movement an exercise in strength development. Sadala 2 was only 8x, and the difference felt like floating. King Vegeta had chosen this world specifically for that reason. Slightly lower gravity meant warriors could train longer without physical breakdown, could focus on technique and form instead of just surviving the environment. But to 10-year-old Vegeta who'd grown up on their heavier homeworld, it felt wrong. Like everything else since the genocide, felt wrong. The training complex was already being constructed when they arrived. 612 Saiyans working with military efficiency to build barracks, combat arenas, meditation chambers, and power development facilities. Traditional Saiyan architecture, functional and aggressive, all sharp angles and reinforced materials designed to withstand warriors fighting at full power. "Your quarters are in the royal sector," King Vegeta said, guiding his silent son through the construction chaos. "But I expect you'll spend most of your time in the training facilities." Vegeta said nothing. Hadn't said anything in 6 months. Just existed in that blank state that worried his father more than rage would have. They reached the central training arena, already functional even if the rest of the complex was still being built. Open to Sadala 2's purple sky, gravity generators installed to push the field up to 15x Earth normal, reinforced combat zones designed for Saiyans who could casually destroy mountains. "This is where we rebuild," King Vegeta said quietly. "Not Planet Vegeta, we can't recreate what was lost, but something new. Something that honors our fallen by becoming strong enough that genocide never happens again." Still nothing from Vegeta. The boy just stared at the empty training field with eyes that didn't seem to register what they were seeing. King Vegeta knelt to his son's level, gripping his shoulders firmly. "Vegeta, look at me." Slowly, those blank eyes focused on his father's face. "I know you're hurting. I know what you saw broke something inside you. But you can't stay in this place forever. The Saiyan race needs its prince, and that means I need you to come back to us. However long it takes, however much it hurts, come back." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, so quietly, King Vegeta almost missed it. "I keep seeing it. Planet Vegeta burning, Silera transforming, and it still wasn't enough. Everyone dying while we ran away like cowards, over and over, every time I close my eyes." "I know." King Vegeta pulled his son into an embrace that Saiyan culture rarely permitted. "I see it too. We all do. But we're not cowards, Vegeta. We're survivors. And survival means carrying the weight of those who didn't make it until we're strong enough to avenge them." Super Saiyan wasn't enough. Silera's Super Saiyan wasn't enough. She achieved the transformation through desperation in a body unprepared to sustain it and burned out in minutes. But a Super Saiyan who's trained properly, who's built their foundation sustainably, that could be enough. That could be the difference. Vegeta pulled back, and something in his eyes had shifted. Not healed, but focused. "Then that's what I'll do. Train until I can achieve Super Saiyan and sustain it. Train until I'm strong enough that what happened to us never happens again." "Good," King Vegeta said, relieved to hear purpose in his son's voice, even if that purpose was driven by trauma. "But we do it right. Sustainable training, proper rest, building strength that lasts instead of burning yourself out chasing quick power. How long will it take? Years. Maybe a decade. But we have time now. Use it wisely." Cell Beta, planet Suno 2, Namek sector. Bardock floated in meditation pose above the planet's surface, surrounded by equipment that felt more mystical than technological. The Saiyan engineers had cobbled together amplification devices using salvaged Sufruian technology and theories about psychic energy that traditional Saiyan science had never explored, creating something that looked like it belonged in a temple more than a training facility. 247 Saiyans spread across the small outpost, all of them uncomfortable with this mystical training approach. Guinea was here, practicing energy control techniques that emphasized efficiency over raw power. Her base strength remained low at 2,100, but her control ratings were exceeding warriors twice her level. "You're getting better at the precognition," she called up to Bardock. How many timelines can you track now? 7 simultaneously, Bardock replied, eyes still closed. I see branching futures like a tree. Same trunk, different paths depending on choices we make. It's disorienting but useful. What do you see? Futures where Frieza finds us within 2 years. Futures where we stay hidden for decades. Futures where Earth becomes a battleground between multiple factions, and futures where Kakarot integrates peacefully and Earth never knows we exist. He opened his eyes, troubled. The one constant is that Earth matters. In 89% of timelines I can perceive, Earth becomes significant to the Saiyan race's future. Because of Kakarot. Partly. But also because Earth itself is special somehow. I can't see why yet. Just that in the brightest futures, the ones where we don't just survive but thrive, Earth's involvement is crucial. Guinea joined him in the air, her key control allowing her to levitate effortlessly despite her low power level. The others don't understand what we're doing here. They think mystical training is a waste of time compared to Cell Gamma's traditional approach. Let them think that. If Cell Gamma's approach produces Super Saiyans through traditional methods, excellent. If our approach discovers alternative paths to power, also excellent. That's the point of the diaspora, trying everything and seeing what works. And if none of it works, then we adapt and try something else. But giving up isn't an option. Cell Delta, Yardrat vicinity. Nappa stood on the observation deck of their ship. They hadn't found a suitable planet yet, just maintained orbit around Yardrat itself while negotiating with the peaceful species that live there, and tried to figure out how the hell you taught spatial manipulation to Saiyans who thought technique meant punch harder. The Yardratians were frustrating, friendly, certainly, helpful even. But their entire approach to key manipulation was so fundamentally different from Saiyan methods that translation became almost impossible. They talked about feeling the space between spaces and becoming one with distance itself, and other mystical nonsense that made Nappa want to punch something. But their instant transmission technique, teleporting instantly across vast distances, was exactly the kind of ability that could turn the tide of battle against superior force. If Frieza attacked one cell and they could teleport reinforcements from other cells instantly, that changed everything. So Nappa gritted his teeth and tried to learn patience from species whose idea of intensive training was sitting very still and thinking about space. Commander, one of his warriors approached, young Saiyan named Kabaz, barely 20 years old, who'd shown unusual aptitude for the strange spatial techniques. The Yardratians have agreed to begin teaching us tomorrow, but they say it'll take years to master instant transmission and decades to truly understand spatial manipulation. Of course it will, Nappa muttered. Nothing about rebuilding our civilization is fast or easy. Tell them we accept their terms and we'll begin training with whatever timeline they recommend. Kabaz hesitated. Sir, some of the warriors are getting restless. They want to train like Cell Gamma, traditional combat, power development, pursuing Super Saiyan transformation. They think learning tricks from peaceful aliens is beneath us. Nappa turned his full attention on the young warrior, and Kabaz took an involuntary step back from the intensity in his commander's eyes. Beneath us? We're refugees, Kabaz, survivors of genocide scattered across the galaxy, living in ships and makeshift bases. Nothing is beneath us anymore. Pride is what got planet Vegeta destroyed, thinking we were too strong to need anything but our own power. Well, our power wasn't enough. So now we learn everything we can from anyone willing to teach us, and we survive long enough to become the kind of threat Frieza should have been afraid of. Yes, sir. Dismissed. And spread the word. Anyone who thinks technique training is beneath them can request transfer to Cell Gamma. We only want warriors here who are willing to learn. 18 months later. Mount Paozu, Earth. Kakarot was 3 years old now, could walk and run with decent coordination, spoke in complete sentences that only occasionally slipped into that high-pitched toddler voice, and had finally convinced Cell Alpha to let him descend to Earth's surface. The small pod touched down in a remote mountain valley during a meteor shower that Cell Alpha had carefully calculated to mask any surveillance detection. Kakarot emerged on wobbly legs, his body still frustratingly limited by age, and stood on Earth soil for the first time in this timeline. It felt like coming home and going somewhere completely new simultaneously. Behind him, the pod's hatch sealed and activated camouflage protocols. It would stay hidden here, a beacon he could reach if things went catastrophically wrong. But the plan was simple. Integrate slowly, find Grandpa Gohan, learn Earth's martial arts and philosophy while maintaining his Saiyan identity in secret. He began walking toward the valley settlement he'd observed through moon-based surveillance. A small house with smoke rising from its chimney, an old man training in the yard with movements that showed decades of disciplined practice. Grandpa Gohan. The old master noticed him quickly, hard not to notice a 3-year-old walking alone through wilderness that should kill any unprepared human. Gohan approached cautiously, his power level of 280 making him naturally wary but also curious. Child? Are you lost? Kakarot looked up at him with wide expression he'd practiced specifically for this moment. Hungry. Lost. Please help? Simple words. Age appropriate. Helpless. Gohan's weathered face softened immediately. Poor thing. Come, let's get you fed and figure out where your family is. As the old master led him toward the house, Kakarot felt complicated emotions warring inside. This was manipulation, using Gohan's compassion to achieve strategic objectives. But it was also giving himself the mentor he needed, creating the relationship that would teach him Earth's philosophy of fighting to protect rather than conquer. Was it wrong to engineer a friendship that had happened by chance in his original timeline, or was he just ensuring the same outcome through planning instead of luck? What's your name, little one? Gohan asked as they entered the warm kitchen. Kakarot hesitated. In the original timeline, Gohan had given him the Earth name, Goku. But this time he already had a name, his Saiyan birth name. Kakarot, he said. Then, seeing Gohan's confused expression at the foreign sound, but you can call me Goku, if easier? Goku, Gohan repeated, testing the name. That's actually quite nice in our language. Awareness of emptiness, a good name for a martial artist. Very well, young Goku. Let's get some food in you, and then we'll discuss what to do about the situation. And just like that, his Earth life began. Not as a baby who'd crashed and forgotten his origins, but as a 3-year-old refugee who'd chosen this path deliberately, carrying knowledge of futures that might be, and the weight of a civilization's survival on his small shoulders. Up on the moon, 183 Saiyans monitored his biosignature, ready to extract him if anything went wrong. Across the galaxy, 3,664 other Saiyans trained and planned and prepared for the day they'd be strong enough to face Frieza without being exterminated. And somewhere in the cold depths of space, Frieza sipped wine and congratulated himself on a genocide well executed, completely unaware that he'd left 3,847 survivors who were now organizing, training, and planning his eventual downfall. The pieces were in position, the timeline had diverged, and the real story was just beginning. 2 years after Planet Vegeta's destruction. The morning sun painted Mount Paozu in shades that reminded Goku of home. Not Earth home, Planet Vegeta home, those amber dawns that he'd watched through palace windows while planning evacuations that saved too few and lost too many. He shook off the memory and focused on the kata, moving through forms that Grandpa Gohan had been teaching him for the past 18 months. 1,000 punches. Perfect form. Barely winded. Incredible, Gohan muttered from the porch, watching his 3.5-year-old adopted grandson move like someone who'd been training for decades. Because he had been, just not in this body, not in this life. Most students take years to achieve that level of precision. You're doing it in months. Goku settled into a ready stance, his tail, still attached, still functional, carefully controlled so he'd never accidentally look at the full moon, swishing behind him with unconscious expression of mood. Ready for sparring, Grandpa! But Gohan didn't stand up, just sat there with his teacup, studying Goku with that look he'd been getting more often lately. The one that said he was seeing past the cheerful child exterior to something deeper and stranger underneath. Before we spar, Gohan said carefully, we need to talk about something that's been troubling me. Goku's expression shifted. Less eager student, more attentive listener. The transition was too smooth, too adult for a toddler. Another tell. You're learning too fast, Gohan continued. The turtle school techniques I've been teaching, forms that took Master Roshi and me decades to master, You're absorbing them in months. Your Kamehameha yesterday was at 60% efficiency. That shouldn't be possible after only 6 months of practice. Is that bad? It's impossible by normal standards. Gohan leaned forward, which brings me back to that conversation we had 6 months ago. About your memories. About knowing things you shouldn't. I think it's time you told me the full truth, Goku. What are you really? There it was. The moment Goku had been preparing for since he deliberately let himself be found in these mountains. The moment where hiding stopped being possible, and he had to decide how much truth was safe to share. He'd learned from his first life that secrets kept too long poisoned relationships, but he'd also learned that too much truth too fast overwhelmed people. Finding that balance? That was the hard part. Grandpa, Goku said quietly, settling into a meditation posture that mirrored Gohan's teaching. What if I told you I'm not entirely human? Gohan didn't look surprised. I suspected something like that when I found you. The tail was the first clue, the way you recover from injuries that should hospitalize a child, your appetite being 3 times what a normal toddler needs. So, what are you? Saiyan, an alien race from a planet that was destroyed 2 years ago. Goku met his grandfather's eyes directly. My birth name is Kakarot. I was sent here to observe Earth, to learn from humans, and eventually to help protect this world from threats that are coming. Threats? What kind? Space tyrants, demons, artificial humans created by scientists who think they're helping. Creatures that could destroy civilizations. Goku paused. I know this sounds insane, but I have memories, knowledge of futures that might happen, things I've lived through before somehow. And Earth is going to need defenders who understand both human compassion and warrior strength. Gohan absorbed this with remarkable composure, decades of martial arts training, giving him emotional control that let him process impossible information without panic. And you're one of these defenders? A 3-year-old alien learning martial arts in the mountains? Eventually. Right now, I'm just a 3-year-old trying to grow strong enough to matter. But yes, eventually. The old master was quiet for a long moment, staring into his tea like it held answers. Then he looked back at Goku with an expression that was part concern, part compassion, and part something that looked like understanding. Your planet was destroyed, which means you're a refugee, a survivor. Gohan's voice was gentle. And survivors carry weights that nobody else can see. How old are you really, Goku? Not your body, your mind. Goku felt something crack in his chest. Nobody had asked him that before. Not his parents in this timeline, not the Cell Alpha commanders, not King Vegeta. They'd all focused on what he knew, what he could do, how his knowledge could save them. But Gohan was asking about him, the person underneath the prophecies and tactical advantages. I don't know exactly, Goku admitted, his voice small. My memories are from someone who lived to be 43, who fought gods and saved universes and died and came back more times than I can count. But I also remember being a baby again, being helpless, watching my birth world burn while I couldn't do anything. So, am I 43? Or 3? Or something in between? You're a child carrying an adult's trauma, Gohan said firmly. And that means you need more than just martial arts training. You need to be allowed to be young sometimes, to play, to make mistakes, to not carry the weight of saving worlds every moment of every day. But the threats will still be there in 5 years, or 10, or whenever they arrive. Gohan's tone left no room for argument. You can't compress decades of preparation into months without destroying yourself. I've seen warriors try that path. They burn out, break down, lose everything that made them worth saving in the first place. He stood up and moved to sit beside Goku, placing a weathered hand on the boy's small shoulder. So here's what we're going to do. I'll continue teaching you everything I know. Techniques, philosophy, the turtle school way of fighting to protect rather than conquer. But we're also going to make sure you have a childhood, friends your age, normal experiences, time to just be a kid. I've never been normal, Goku said quietly. Then we'll figure out what normal means for a time-displaced alien warrior prophet, Gohan replied with the hint of a smile. Together, because you don't have to carry this alone anymore. Something released in Goku's chest that he hadn't realized he'd been holding tight. Permission. Permission to be young. Permission to not have all the answers. Permission to trust someone else to help carry the weight. Thank you, Grandpa. Now then, Gohan stood, settling into a combat stance. Let's see that Kamehameha at full power. No holding back this time. I want to see what you're really capable of. Goku grinned, pure and genuine, probably the first truly childlike expression he'd shown in months. You're going to regret saying that. Cell Alpha Command Center, Earth's moon. Taro watched the biometric readouts from Goku's monitoring implant with scientific fascination and something that might have been relief. The conversation with Gohan had gone better than any of their projections suggested. Full disclosure of alien heritage, accepted with remarkable composure. Emotional support offered without conditions. Permission to be young while also training for future threats. He told him, Taro announced to the command staff. Partial truth. Saiyan heritage, destroyed planet, future knowledge. Gohan accepted it. More than that, he's providing exactly the kind of guidance Kakarot needs. Silera leaned over his shoulder, studying the data. Risk assessment? Minimal. Gohan's psychological profile indicates high personal loyalty, low institutional compliance. He's not going to report to authorities. More importantly, he's balancing warrior training with emotional development. Taro pulled up Goku's recent metrics. Power level growth is steady at 5,800. Combat technique acquisition is accelerating, but his stress hormones are down 34% since that conversation. He's sleeping better, eating better, the support structure is working. Good, Silera straightened, because he's going to need that stability. I'm recommending we facilitate peer interaction soon. He needs friends his own age, not just an elderly mentor. You want to arrange a playdate for the warrior prophet? I want to give a 3-year-old carrying civilization's weight a chance to make a friend, Silera corrected. There's a difference. She pulled up surveillance data on West City. There's a child there, daughter of Dr. Brief, founder of Capsule Corporation. Name, Bulma. Age, 4 years old. Intelligence quotient testing off their human scales. Strong personality, scientifically minded, exactly the kind of person who wouldn't be intimidated by Goku's unusual abilities. How do we arrange contact without revealing our presence? We don't arrange it directly. We plant information about Gohan's location with Dr. Brief through channels that look like academic networks. He's been corresponding with other martial artists about training methodologies. We make it look like natural networking led him to discover there's a master living near his vacation property. He brings his daughter. She meets Goku. Friendship develops organically. Taro considered this. Manipulation. Strategy. We're not forcing the friendship, just providing opportunity. If they don't get along naturally, fine, but I think they will, and Kakarot needs that. Approved. Set it up. Cell Gamma, Planet Sadala 2. Prince Vegeta moved through the 15x gravity chamber like a machine built for violence, executing combat forms with mechanical precision that should have been impressive but somehow wasn't. It was too perfect, too controlled, too empty of anything resembling passion or joy or even anger. Just movement for movement's sake, training as routine rather than purpose. King Vegeta watched from the observation deck and felt worry eating at his gut like acid. 18 hours straight, Nappa reported, having returned from Cell Delta specifically to discuss the prince's condition. He's been training at that pace for 3 months now. Barely sleeps, barely eats unless we force him, and his psychological assessments. He pulled up the data, and King Vegeta didn't need to read it to know what it said. He'd been watching his son slowly disappear into training like it was armor against trauma, and all the royal authority in the universe couldn't order someone to heal. He's going to kill himself, Nappa said bluntly. Not through combat, through exhaustion, through pushing past what his body can sustain. I know. King Vegeta's voice was hollow. Every time I try to make him rest, he argues that Silera achieved Super Saiyan in moments of desperation. That suffering produces transformation. That comfort is the enemy of progress. He's not wrong. He's not right either. There's a difference between pushing limits and self-destruction. King Vegeta stood. I need to intervene before he crosses a line he can't return from. He descended into the gravity chamber, the increased weight pressing on him immediately. His own power level had grown to 21,000 over the past 2 years. Impressive development for someone in their 40s. But it felt inadequate watching his son train himself to death. Vegeta. Stop. The prince didn't pause, just transitioned into the next form. 2,000 more repetitions, then I'll... I said stop. King Vegeta's command voice, the one that had ordered armies, ruled planets, made warriors twice his size obey without question, filled the chamber. Vegeta froze mid-punch, trembling with suppressed energy. Look at yourself. King Vegeta gestured to a reflective surface. You're bleeding. You're bleeding. Exhausted. Your power level is fluctuating because your body is eating itself for energy. This isn't training, son. This is self-harm. I'm getting stronger. You're getting damaged. There's a difference. King Vegeta moved closer. Silera achieved Super Saiyan in her final moments, and it killed her. She burned out completely because her body wasn't prepared to sustain that power. Is that what you want? To follow her path right into an early grave? If it means becoming strong enough to protect our people. You can't protect anyone if you're dead. King Vegeta grabbed his son's shoulders, forcing eye contact. Listen to me. You are 10 years old. You have time. Decades ahead of you. There's no deadline, no countdown, no reason to destroy yourself chasing power that will come naturally if you just train sustainably. But Frieza isn't hunting us. Our intelligence shows no indication he's even looking for survivors. He thinks he succeeded, which means we have time to do this right, to build strength that lasts instead of burning bright and dying fast. Vegeta's eyes were wet, and that scared King Vegeta more than any training obsession could. The boy hadn't cried since Planet Vegeta exploded. Just shut down, went blank, poured everything into training like emotion itself was an enemy to overcome. I keep seeing it, Vegeta whispered finally. Planet Vegeta burning, Silera transforming and still failing. All of us running like cowards while our world died, over and over, every time I close my eyes. And I think, if I'd been stronger, if I'd achieved Super Saiyan, maybe I could have. Maybe nothing would have changed, King Vegeta said firmly. Frieza's power is 120 million. Even multiple Super Saiyans working together couldn't match that. Your strength wouldn't have saved our world, Vegeta. It just would have gotten you killed alongside everyone else. He pulled his son into an embrace that Saiyan culture rarely permitted. But King Vegeta had learned that sometimes being a father mattered more than being a king. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to save everyone. You just have to keep moving forward, one day at a time, building strength that will last long enough to actually matter when the time comes. Vegeta stood rigid in his father's arms for a long moment. Then something broke, and the 10-year-old boy who'd been pretending to be an adult warrior finally let himself cry. I'm scared, he admitted, that we'll never be strong enough, that Frieza will find us and finish what he started, that I'll fail everyone again like I failed them before. You didn't fail anyone. You were 8 years old when our planet was destroyed. That wasn't your responsibility. King Vegeta tightened the embrace. But I understand the fear. I feel it too. The difference is that I've learned to channel it into sustainable growth instead of self-destruction. Let me teach you that. Let me help you find a better path. What if the better path isn't fast enough? Then we adapt, but destroying yourself guarantees failure. Surviving, training smart, building real strength, that at least gives us a chance. Cell Beta, Planet Suno 2. Bardock floated in meditation pose, surrounded by psychic amplification equipment that hummed with energy that felt more mystical than technological. His precognitive visions had grown sharper over the past 2 years, more detailed, showing not just possible futures, but the decision points that led to them. It was disorienting and useful in equal measure. Guinea sat nearby, practicing the energy control techniques she'd been developing. Her power level was still only 2,400, low by any Saiyan standard, but her efficiency ratings were approaching 97%. She could maintain complex key constructs for hours, while warriors 3 times her strength burned out in minutes. Another vision? She asked, sensing his concentration shift. Multiple timelines, Bardock confirmed, eyes still closed. I'm seeing 7 branching futures simultaneously now. It's like watching a tree grow and fast forward. Same trunk, different branches depending on the choices we make. What do you see? Everything. Futures where Frieza discovers our survival within a year and hunts us to extinction. Futures where we stay hidden for decades and slowly rebuild. Futures where Earth becomes a battleground with multiple factions fighting over it. Futures where Kakarot integrates peacefully and humans never even know aliens exist. He opened his eyes, looking troubled. But there's a pattern. In 91% of the timelines I can perceive, Earth becomes crucial to our future. And in 73%, Frieza eventually learns we survived and comes hunting. So we have maybe 2 years before everything changes again, Gine said quietly. Give or take. The timelines are fuzzy on exact timing. Too many variables. But yes, something happens within the next few years that forces us to choose what kind of civilization we want to rebuild. What choice? Power versus compassion. Becoming conquerors again versus becoming protectors. In the dark futures, the ones where we become exactly what we were before Planet Vegeta, we survive, but we're hollow, empty, just violence for violence's sake. But in the bright futures, the ones where we actually thrive, we've learned something from humans, from Earth, from Kakarot's influence. What do we learn? That strength without purpose is just destruction, that the strongest warriors are the ones fighting to protect something beyond themselves. Bardock looked toward where Earth would be, light years away, that maybe Saiyan culture needed to be destroyed so something better could grow from the ashes. Gine was quiet for a moment. That's almost heretical, saying our culture deserved destruction. Not deserved. Needed. There's a difference. Bardock pulled up holographic displays showing the 12 scattered cells. Look at us now. Cell Gamma is developing traditional warrior culture, yes, but Cell Delta is learning techniques from peaceful aliens. Cell Beta is exploring mystical paths. Cell Alpha is preparing for integration with a primitive species. And cells Epsilon through Lambda are experimenting with everything from farming to art to science. We're evolving, Gine said. We're becoming, not one thing, but multiple possibilities, and in a few years, something will force us to choose which possibility becomes our future. Mount Paozu, 3 months later. Goku was practicing his Kamehameha when he heard the distinctive sound of advanced technology approaching, rare in these remote mountains. He looked up to see a hover car landing near Gohan's house, sleek and expensive and completely impractical for wilderness. A small girl with blue-green hair emerged, wearing clothing that screamed, "I'm rich and I don't care about your peasant mountains." She looked around with the critical assessment of someone used to scientific precision in everything. "Is this the right place?" she was asking her driver. "Daddy said I was meeting a boy my age, but I just see trees and rocks and more trees." Grandpa Gohan came out of the house, smiling. "Ah, you must be Miss Brief. Dr. Brief contacted me last week about arranging a meeting. I'm son Gohan, and this is my grandson, Goku." The girl, Bulma, Goku's memory supplied helpfully, studied him with zero attempt at politeness. "You're all dirty, and your hair's weird. And why do you have a tail?" Goku blinked. In all his preparation for meeting Bulma again, he'd somehow forgotten that 4-year-old geniuses had absolutely no filter. "I'm training," he said simply. "The tail is genetic, and my hair doesn't comb down." "What kind of training?" "Martial arts, energy manipulation, strength development." Bulma's eyes lit up with genuine interest. "Like in the movies? Can you do the glowing energy thing?" Without thinking, Goku created a small key sphere in his palm, perfectly controlled, rotating gently, harmless but visible. The Capsule Corp employee's eyes went wide. Gohan looked amused. "And Bulma?" Bulma lunged forward, trying to touch it. "That's so cool! How does it work? Is it plasma, contained electromagnetic fields, biological energy conversion?" Some kind of... Goku dispersed the sphere before she could burn herself. "It's called Ki. Life energy. Everyone has it, but most people can't control it consciously. Takes training." "Can you teach me?" "You're 4. "So are you, stupid." Bulma put her hands on her hips. "Besides, I'm a genius. Daddy says I have an IQ of 240 all. I can learn anything." And there it was. The same dynamic from his first life, but compressed to toddler age and somehow even more chaotic. Bulma demanding impossible things with absolute confidence. Goku trying to figure out if he should be impressed or exhausted. Both of them too smart for their own good in completely different ways. Over the next several hours, Grandpa Gohan watched with barely contained amusement as these two brilliant, strange children figured out how to interact. Bulma demanded demonstrations of key techniques, analyzed them with vocabulary that shouldn't exist in a 4-year-old, immediately started theorizing about practical applications. Goku showed her his training routine, explained the principles behind energy manipulation in simplified terms, and found himself actually enjoying teaching someone who asked good questions. So, if everyone has this key stuff, Bulma mused, sitting on a rock while Goku practiced forms, why doesn't everyone learn to use it? People don't know it exists, and it takes discipline, patience, years of training. Most adults don't want to invest that time for something they can't immediately use. That's dumb. If I had superpowers, I'd use them constantly. It's not superpowers, it's just understanding how your body's energy works and learning to control it consciously. Sounds like superpowers to me. Bulma kicked her legs idly. Hey Goku, can I come back next week? I want to see more training. Maybe try that meditation thing you mentioned. Goku hesitated. Making friends meant forming connections. Connections were vulnerabilities. If something happened to Bulma because she was associated with him, because some future threat targeted people he cared about, but Grandpa Gohan's words echoed in his mind. You need to be allowed to be young sometimes. Sure, Goku smiled. Next week, but you have to actually try the meditation. No getting bored after 5 minutes. Deal. As Bulma's hovercar departed later that afternoon, Grandpa Gohan settled beside Goku on the porch. That went well, the old master observed. She's exhausting, Goku admitted. But in a good way, she asks so many questions. That's what friends do. They challenge you, interest you, make you see things differently. Gohan's expression was knowing. You needed that. Someone who treats you like a peer, rather than a prophet. But she doesn't know what I am, what I'm preparing for. She knows you're someone interesting who can do impossible things. For now, that's enough. Gohan stood, stretching old joints. Friendship doesn't require complete honesty immediately. It requires genuine care. The rest comes with time. Up on the moon, Salipa watched the interaction through surveillance feeds and allowed herself something rare. Hope. Kakarot was integrating. Building connections. Learning to be young while also preparing for future threats. The balance was delicate, but it was working. The Bulma brief integration was successful, Taro reported. Biometric readings show reduced stress hormones, improved social engagement metrics, and genuine enjoyment during the interaction. Good. Salipa closed the feed. He deserves that much. Even warrior prophets deserve friends. 2 months later, the detection. Goku was mid-kata when he felt them. 3 key signatures descending from orbit, each one reading around 1500. Not strong by Saiyan standards, barely worth noticing compared to the warriors he'd known. But they were here, on Earth, scanning. Frieza Force scouts. Grandpa, Goku said urgently, abandoning his form. We have visitors from space, potentially hostile. Gohan's expression sharpened immediately, the warrior underneath surfacing. How far? Descending toward West City. 3 signatures, relatively weak. But if they're Frieza Force, if they report Earth has interesting energy signatures, more would come. Stronger ones. And Earth wasn't ready. Can you handle them? Goku assessed honestly. His power level was 8,900 now, more than enough to handle 3 1500 level scouts easily. But handling them meant revealing himself, meant showing a Saiyan child with advanced capabilities existed on Earth, meant compromising Cell Alpha's entire operation. I can handle them, but it'll expose us. Cell Alpha will have to decide whether to eliminate them before they can report, or let them investigate and hope they don't notice anything unusual. Up on the moon, Cell Alpha's command center erupted in controlled chaos. 3 Frieza Force scouts entered Earth's atmosphere. Do we engage? If we kill them, Frieza sends investigators. If we don't, they might detect Kakarot. Taro made the decision with the cold calculation that came from surviving genocide. We observe. If they approach within 10 kilometers of Kakarot's location, we intervene. Otherwise, we let them complete their routine survey and leave. Earth is registered as a primitive world with no strategic value, unless we give them reason to think otherwise. Down on Earth's surface, the 3 scouts were scanning West City with professional detachment. Power levels mostly between 5 and 15, Scout 1 reported. Primitive civilization, early industrial age, no strategic resources detected, classification recommendation, non-priority development world. Agreed, Scout 2 confirmed. Standard survey completion in progress, we should be done within... Wait, anomalous reading. His scouter pinged, then again, then started climbing rapidly. Power level spike detected. Location, mountainous region, 800 kilometers east of current position. Reading is 8,900 on a primitive world. All three scouts turn their attention toward Mount Paozu, toward Goku. That's impossible, Scout 3 said. Reconfirm reading. Confirmed. 8,900 units, stable, definitely biological source. Could be indigenous life form, but that power level. Investigate, Scout 1 decided. If there's a high-power indigenous species, Lord Frieza needs to know about it. Up on the moon, Salipa was already moving toward the launch bay. We're going down. Taro coordinates Cell Alpha combat teams. If those scouts get within visual range of Kakarot, we eliminate them before they can transmit data. Understood. All teams to combat ready. Goku stood in Grandpa Gohan's yard, watching the sky where three key signatures were approaching rapidly. His power level was suppressed as low as he could manage without losing combat readiness, but apparently it wasn't enough. They were coming, and whatever happened in the next few minutes would determine whether Earth remained hidden and safe, or became another battleground in the Saiyan diaspora's desperate flight from extinction. Grandpa, Goku said quietly, things are about to get complicated.